has said that he's looking to sort out unfair trade deals with countries like Canada and also France at the G7 meeting in Quebec. Inar Tangent continues to be with us, so does Meera Shankar and Anil Trigunath. Inar, if I could ask you, everyone is saying this is going to be the most acrimonious G7 in history. What are we going to see in terms of outcomes when you've got Donald Trump talking in this manner and Emmanuel Macron talking in this manner, where he's saying that everyone must get together and resist the hegemony of Donald Trump?
Well, quite frankly, Donald has a very big task on him. He'll be leaving early when they're talking about climate change. No surprise there. He does have to be in Singapore for the next event, North Korea. But he's in a very difficult position. Generally, with Donald Trump, his bark is worse than his bite. When he's actually confronted by people, he tends to kind of give in and say, oh, we can work something out. A lot of people say that this is his negotiating posture. Others say that he's just simply trying to drive the news cycle so that it's not focusing on his domestic issues and investigations. But one thing is clear, the U.S. is isolated like never before. And the question is, will it survive this? The Prime Minister is absolutely correct. If the rest of the world decides that they do not need the United States, this could have a massive impact on dollar trade, and the political and economic consequences would be with us for many years to come.
Okay. All right. And Meera Shankar, what do you feel about Emmanuel Macron's statement? He is urging G7 partners, and in a tweet, he has asked them to not fall for US drift towards isolationism and hegemony. And he's also pointed out that 6 other countries in the G7 have a market bigger than the US market. So what kind of a G7 are we going to see? And will all the partners, including Italy and Japan, be on the same page?
Well, I think certainly Europe and Canada, who are major partners in the G7, will be on this page, because they've had their differences, not only over trade, but also over the Iran deal and the issue of secondary sanctions, which the US has imposed or said it will impose against any companies that trade with Iran in certain areas or invest in Iran. And while the EU has said that it has recommended that the blocking law be activated, this law basically prohibits European companies from implementing sanctions imposed by other countries which are not adopted by the EU. And it was adopted in the context of US secondary sanctions over Cuba. But, the companies themselves will really be looking at whether, the trade with the US matters more to them than the trade with Iran. And so that's an issue. So apart from that, they have all the trade tensions between the two. So, yes, Japan and Italy. Italy would probably go along with the European consensus, but Japan could possibly seek to temper, as could the UK. But it is an
interesting.
issue
Ambassador Meera Shankar, I'm running out of time. I'm going to take a few quick questions. Yeah. Right. Yes. Ambassador Trigunath, do you also feel that the US will be highly isolated? Do you agree with Inar over there? Very quickly, if you could sum it up in 20 seconds.
Well, I think that as far as it is not a G7 summit, it is G6+1. And secondly, on the question of talks with North Korea, in fact, all the countries, G7, all of them are supporting this, Trump. As far as the question of trade sanctions are concerned, I think the President, Trump has a proclivity to start with the maximalist position. Like what he has done with China, as we know that they have come down eventually, and so gradually they start with the topmost position, start with the hardline position, and eventually negotiates down. So I don't think it's going to be a breaking point there, but at the same time, most interesting thing would be to watch that how he comes out with getting Russia back into the G7 or G8.
Right. Yeah. So that's important, because he's made that plea that Russia should be back. He's proposing that, but this is something that other countries are opposing. Let me also get in Inar once. Inar, June 12th, everyone is keeping their eyes on that summit meeting between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un in Singapore. What do you feel about that? Do you think this is ease tensions? Do you think this is only the first step?
Well, unfortunately, yes. It can only be a first step. There's questions about how prepared Donald Trump is. He does not have a team in place. He says that he will be winging it, basically reacting. He's also indicated everything from I'll invite young Kim to the United States for official visit, or I'll walk out of the meeting. So you really have all of the polar ends at this. But the fact still remains that they have a very different idea of what denuclearization means. The U.S. wants something immediate, verifiable, and DPRK is not willing to do anything, really, except over an extended period of time where they can help themselves economically.
Right. Thanks very much, Inar Tanjan. We'd also like to thank Ambassador Meera Shankar for joining us all the way from London, as also Ambassador Trigunath for joining us on CNBC-TV18 this evening. We'll wrap it up right now, but it's going to be a very important diplomatic weekend. You've got the SCO summit, you've got the G7 in Quebec, and you also have that meeting between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. We're hoping, India is hoping that this would provide an escape route to easing tensions in the future. We leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us.